Good morning. I'm Janet Hemming. I'll be your service leader this morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Rappahannock. Welcome, and we are so glad that you've decided to join us today. In looking for a chalice lighting for this morning's service, I went to the normal source of the worship web, UUA, and I just couldn't find anything that met this very unique service. So I went to my friend Copilot and got a chalice lighting from AI. We light this chalice for the dreamers, the visionaries, the everyday magicians, those who see beyond what is to what could be. May this flame ignite our courage to imagine boldly, to let the fantastic free us from the confines of the ordinary. In its glow, may we find the power to transform the mundane to sacred possibility. And our opening words this morning are by Linda Hart, to pause on the journey. Every day is a new start. Every year, a beginning, or so we'd like to believe. And we don't know, can't anticipate where we will go, what will happen, what delights await, what heartbreaks will tear us open. The past, unexpected, that open before us. Even knowing that, we lean our lives in particular ways, focus on particular moments, incline our hearts to what is in our hearts and lives and hands to offer. We know for sure that ours is in the giving. Finding is what is on the path and off. We come here amidst the discoveries and delights, the worries and woes, to find a moment, to connection, to pause on the journey in gratitude and sorrow. It is good to be together. Our speaker this morning is Kristi VanAudenhove, one of our own and a current board member. I've had the pleasure of working with Kristi through 2 ministerial searches and the development of a secondary UUFR covenant. She has shared her many skills with the fellowship over the years. Kristi has been active in the movements to end sexual and intimate partner violence since she was a young pup. She has been escaping to new realities through speculative fiction since she was first learned to read. Stories have fueled some brilliant and some not so brilliant ideas, as well as a good bit of courage and optimism along the way. She is also nurtured and inspired by the wonders of nature here and now, along with a wide circle of beings, both family and friends. To welcome Kristi to what would be the podium, but the official seat now.
And thank you to everyone who helped with accommodations today, so I could still do the service, but seated. The reading. A few years ago, Octavia Butler's essay from Essence magazine was reprinted in a beautiful little book. That essay offered a few rules for predicting the future, 4 to be exact. 1, learn from the past. 2, respect the law of consequences. 3, be aware of your perspective. And 4, count on surprises. Butler shares some thoughts about each of those rules, and also what can go wrong with predictions when you ignore the rules. Her essay concludes, so why try to predict the future at all if it's so difficult, so nearly impossible? Because making predictions is one way to give warning when we see ourselves drifting in dangerous directions. Because prediction is a useful way of pointing out safer, wiser courses. Because most of all, our tomorrow is the child of our today. Through thought and deed, we exert a great deal of influence over this child, even though we can't control it. Absolutely. Best to think about it, though. Best to try to shape it into something good. Best to do that for any time. I'm going to be reading from and talking about a number of different books today, and I brought them all just in case you hear something that you might like to read if you haven't already. And we're going to start with a book by T.J. Klune titled Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And that song plays prominently in the book. It's also just a delightful song. I'm going to begin by reading to you the very last paragraph of the acknowledgments from T.J. Klune. To my queer community, I write these books for anyone who wants to read them, but in my head and heart, I'm always thinking of you first and foremost. In case no one has told you this today, I'm proud of you. I know it's hard being human. I know that it seems like things are getting more difficult, but please don't forget that while hate may be loud, we are louder, and no one can take that away from us. 2024. Published. This delightful book centers around a family. Arthur, who is eventually known as Dad, is both a man and the Phoenix on the cover. Linus, who will become Papa, is human. The children include Chauncey, a green boy with tentacles for arms and foot-long stalks holding his eyes atop his head, and Fee, who is a wood sprite, Talia, a garden gnome, Sal, who is a shapeshifter, Theodore, the wyvern or dragon, and Lucy, who identifies as he, him, and also as the Antichrist. The family lives on an island where the children can be free to learn and grow while their parents take on the job of both raising them and changing the policies of the department in charge of magical youth. When their efforts to change the system from within fail to help humans understand that magical youth are not to be feared or controlled, Arthur and Linus give up. But they've done too good a job of raising their kids. This book is also a great parenting primer. And the children organize and take a stand. The humans who know them have their backs, and this leads to the creation of the first intentional human and magical beings community. The wise use of social media plays a role when photos that the children post of their peaceful resistance show the department in charge of magical youth leadership losing control. Public opinion about magical youth begins to change. Near the end of the book, a wedding takes place. The song that is playing at the ceremony is the one we started with today, Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And a new member of the family, a child named David, who was smuggled on the island mid-story in the midst of terrible crackdowns on magical beings where they're being locked up, offers these words. David rubbed his hands together in glee, little puffs of cold, crystalline air rising between his fingers. He cleared his throat and began to speak into the salt-tinged quiet. I didn't want to come here at first. I didn't know who these people were, and they were promising me things I'd heard before. He paused, taking a breath. I knew Helen. She was nice to me. She said there was a place where I could be me, where I wouldn't have to hide. He lifted his head, searching the crowd. Arthur followed his gaze and saw Jason and Byron raise their hands in a wave, and he smiled. I'm a Yeti. I have claws and really neat hair that can get messy if I don't take care of it. And sometimes I like scaring people, not to hurt them, but to remind them that fear doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be mean or cruel. It doesn't have to cause harm. And that's what I'm learning from my new home. It doesn't matter what we look like. It doesn't matter where we came from or what we can do. All that matters is that we're here together being anything and anyone we want to be. David stared at the crowd in anticipation. Arthur felt a rush of magic, and behind David, a red neon sign popped into existence, blinking the words, "You better clap now before you lose your hands." That came from the Antichrist. Everyone did, and loudly, on their feet, hooting and hollering. And David beamed as Lucy, the Antichrist, tilted his head to the side, the sign disappearing. Thank you, you're such a great audience. My point, this place is different. It really is. And maybe everyone doesn't see it that way quite yet, but they will. It doesn't have to be today or even tomorrow, but it'll happen. I know it. It doesn't have to be today or tomorrow, but it'll happen. I know it. What a gift born out of the author's experiences of loss and fear and anger. This is a story about underground and above ground change work happening side by side. It's a story of believing in the long, long arc of generational change. It's a story of not only accepting differences, but loving and trusting otherness, even with the Antichrist. Speculative fiction has many gifts to offer, and the one that draws me in again and again, and the one that has changed my trajectory as a survivor and an advocate and a movement leader and a partner and a parent, is the space that is created for each of us to step outside of the time and place and culture in which we're living, to detach from our beliefs and our worldviews and our knowledge and explore possibilities we might never have imagined. Whether utopian or dystopian, the beginnings of new worlds or our own world post-apocalypse, fantastical or far too believable, speculative fiction gives us a glimpse of paths to the future. As people who are working for a future that is the beloved community, this is an invaluable tool for understanding both possibilities and unintended consequences. T.J. Klune writes the type of fantastical speculative fiction that stretches our imaginations by offering worlds that may not exist. I mean, they might. I don't think they do. Where we get to see what happens when the rules of our time and culture are suspended or amplified or turned inside out and upside down. Another of my favorite books in this genre is Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Herland was written as a serial novel for a journal in 1915. Charlotte Perkins Gilman was not generally a fiction writer. She was a scholar who primarily wrote commentary on economics and a little bit about gender and raising kids, a little bit about religion. What makes this book an intriguing read is Gilman's vision for what could happen in a society that is completely cut off from the rest of the world and made up exclusively, first of women, but then who evolve into a new race of people who are of only one very difficult to define gender and who evolve to become capable of reproducing or not at will. As Herland describes the formerly women's response to the miracle, quote, "They began at once to plan and build for their children, all the strength and intelligence of the whole of them devoted to that one thing. With that focus, as their population grew and it became apparent that growth was not sustainable, the community came together to think out a solution. They considered the history of the world they knew before they became isolated and agreed that their solution would not be to go in search of new land or new peoples to conquer. They would not build an economy that led to the prosperity of some at the expense of many. Instead, they decided to figure out how many people their country could support in healthy, comfortable communities, and then to voluntarily limit themselves to that number of people so that all members of future generations would have the opportunity to thrive. Reading the book is an opportunity to stretch your brain a bit and think about how things might be different in a country where, quote, their time sense was not limited to the hopes and ambitions of an individual life. They habitually considered and carried out plans for improvements that might take centuries to achieve. Over the years, the people of Herland transitioned the flora and fauna to those best suited for their closed ecosystem, and only those that were essential to the health and welfare of the community. In a bit of Gilman humor, which there's not a lot, eventually the only four-legged animal that continues to be nurtured in the land is the cat. They simplified the language to make it easy and beautiful for children to understand and use. Likewise, they transitioned clothing to enhance its functionality and ease of wear. Reading the book, I could not help but be struck by the similarities between the culture Gilman was imagining in 1915 and the indigenous cultures around the planet that have been decimated by colonialism. Here was a white academic feminist author more than a century ago, imagining the possibilities of community, very much rooted in the seven-generation thinking of indigenous communities, and inviting her peers to consider those possibilities. Speculative fiction can also be used to describe future possibilities that are deeply rooted in our current trajectories. Kim Stanley Robinson's book, The Ministry of the Future, was published in 2020 and begins shortly after 2025. We're getting close to that. The book begins with a disturbing description of one specific climate catastrophe. Chapters follow that offer small glimpses of isolated yet connected tragedies, interspersed with politics. For example, the context and content of the Paris Agreement under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is explained really well. I learned a lot. Science, for example, the actual mechanics of global warming. Economics, a quote from the book, there can be enough security for all, but only if we all have security. And relationships. There are more than 100 chapters, organized around 600 pages or so. Not a light read by any stretch of the imagination. The story is frightening, but hope is also on offer. The central message there is that there is a way forward, that we have what we need to create a world where the climate and the beings of the earth can heal and eventually thrive. It's going to take some time. And to get there, we have to act now with urgency and make some changes in our trajectory. We have to take many different paths. There's not one solution. We cannot wait for everyone to be ready to go, ready to make changes that will be necessary. We need to go with the willing, and we need to go now. The Shutouts by Gabriel Korn is another book that centers around climate change and politics and economics. There are two stories threaded through the book, one that takes place in 2041 and one that takes place in 2078. I'm going to read you a letter from the conclusion of the 2041 story. This letter is from a woman who left her husband and daughter 6 years earlier, convinced that her truly exceptional tech skills are vital to a revolutionary effort to prevent both a global climate catastrophe and a related plan for corporate takeover of the governments of the world. Using scientific innovations that currently are being used only to save a select few. She is writing from prison in 2041. Rick, that was her husband. Rick, at war, the enemy is the changing climate, or rather the people turning a blind eye to the change, speeding it up with their selfish decisions. We all have a responsibility to fight. If I was a man going off to war, I would have been a hero. But I was a woman going off to fight for humanity, not with it. And so I'm the villain. Listen, I expect to spend the rest of my life here. I'm okay with that. I've done all I can for the world. But I need you to know that something big is coming. A shift in how humanity exists on this earth. A lot of people are going to die. Power grids are going to be shut off. The old modes of transportation, cars, trains, planes, even boats, will have nothing to run on. The agricultural industries will fall apart. The government will limit its support to a certain class of people, a class that you and I are not a part of. I gave my life to the cause, but it's happening no matter what. Everything I wrote to Orchid, her daughter, who she wrote to every day while she was gone, is real. She told Orchid all about the science she was doing, the technology, the conspiracies. You have to believe me. I know it all sounds insane, like the conspiracy theory of a mad woman, but you don't actually think I'm crazy, right? Even though you let them lock me in here. Regardless of what you believe, I need Orchid to survive, and I know you do too. No matter how much you hate me, we will always have this in common. I need you to teach her everything you know about survival. He's a survivalist. So that she's prepared to live without the comforts of modernity. Teach her to hunt, to grow food, to build shelter. Make sure if she's ever on her own that she will be okay. This is the only thing I'll ever ask of you again. If you don't know how to teach her, go to the library, get some books, put in the effort. It's going to be worth it. The world will turn upside down before you know it, and there's nothing left to do but adapt. Orchid is brave. She learns quickly. She'll need you at first, but I hope that you can help her need you less, because one day you'll be gone and she'll be left with the memory of you and hopefully the knowledge you've imparted. Please teach her well. Please remind her that I love her, even though I left, that I left because I love her, that I hope someday she is blessed enough to love someone as much as I love them. Orchid does indeed learn survival skills from her father. She uses those skills as one of the many who are shut out of the artificial environments that are helping an elite few to survive climate change. She is part of a rogue group that is able to access the science and technology research done by her mother, in part, that might have saved everyone, but was intentionally suppressed by emerging fascist governments. This brave but struggling group begins to build something new, sharing that science and technology freely with anyone and everyone who wants to learn, creating small communities that are becoming sustainable. from the final passages of this book. This is how the majority of humans left on Earth would learn to live in an irreversibly changed climate, not through the billionaire-funded structures that sheltered a select few, but through the sharing of resources between people who cared and wanted to do things differently and better. There's an emphasis on the collective, on sustainability, on relationships, and the idea that it is enough for people who are ready to do things differently to just start doing that without waiting for everyone to join. It was an unexpectedly powerful book. Octavia Butler, the author of the essay that inspired today's reading, conceived of parables. We heard a little bit about those last week, and some similarities and some big differences. The parables ground us in the role of the spiritual dimension of our future vision. They also lift the importance of a clear vision and a good strategy, which always includes an alternative strategy. From the parable of the sower by Octavia Butler, within that book, there's a book called Earthseed, the Books of the Living, that is the religion that emerges. And from Earthseed, all that you touch, you change. I see that some people know this. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. 2024 seemed a long way off in 1993 when Octavia Butler first published this book. Not so much now. As the book opens on 2024, the middle class is disappearing, living in walled communities to protect themselves from the poor, who are rising up and struggling to get by as food and clean water become increasingly scarce as a result of global warming. The takeaway here, thinking and planning and preparing ahead to survive the worst possible outcomes is vital if we hope to create something better. And in addition to food and water and tools and protection, our backpacks need to include a new and more evolved religion. The next in this series is the parable of the talents. Even with all that goes well, in the survival story from Parable of the Sower, and as it continues in Parable of the Talents, it becomes really hard to read because there's just so much more to endure, to survive. There are external and internal battles to fight. There's a lot. At the same time that there begins to be a hope of thriving that emerges. I remember years ago when it was a bit chilling to read in this book about a politician who literally, his slogan was, "Make America Great Again." He was looking to make America great again by locking up and re-educating everyone who was outside of the circle of white, conservative, Christian America. Those words are even more frightening now than they were reading them in a piece of fiction. In Earthseed, the Books of the Living, which are woven throughout both books, you can find these words. Choose your leaders with wisdom and forethought. To be led by a coward is to be controlled by all that the coward fears. To be led by a fool is to be led by the opportunists who control the fool. To be led by a thief is to offer up your most precious treasures to be stolen. To be led by a liar is to ask to be told lies. To be led by a tyrant is to sell yourself and those you love into slavery. Worthy of a pause. There are also parables that were never written. Octavia Butler didn't have the time to write them before her untimely death. Butler struggled with walking the path that would be required to get to her envisioned ending. She thought it would take 4 more books. The first 2 span from 2024 to 2090. 4 more books. A long story of heartache, probably near annihilation, hard work, and tremendous faith to realize the destiny of Earthseed, a thriving and sustainable community taking root amongst the stars. So those books were never written. Still, some might say these parables were just the seed that was needed to inspire hope for what is possible in many, many people, including social justice warriors, often from marginalized and historically oppressed communities, who've narrated thousands of necessary stories about past, present, and future since then. It really inspired a writing movement. We're going to close with a portion of one of those stories included in Octavia's Brood. Walida Imarisha begins the introduction to the book with these words. Whenever we try to envision a world without war, without violence, without prisons, without capitalism, we are engaging in speculative fiction. All organizing is science fiction. Organizers and activists dedicate their lives to creating and envisioning another world or many other worlds. So what better venue for organizers to explore their work than science fiction stories? That is the premise behind the book you hold in your hands. This is a book written all by great fans of Octavia Butler, all people from various marginalized communities, some of whom had never written before, but who gave it a try to write a piece of speculative fiction that could imagine a future. All organizing is science fiction. The story I've selected, and they're all pretty great, is what might be considered a future story, a story that is set in that future that we are working toward, reflecting back on us as the ancestors. If this idea appeals to you, this notion of what might the future be like, I'd also encourage you to consider reading Ursula Le Guin's Always Coming Home. Le Guin took 5 years to write this fictional ethnography of stories from a variety of people in all kinds of formats, including drama and music. They are the Kesh, a future people who have created a healthy, peaceful community where everyone contributes to the collective well-being. They describe this as landing back on planet Earth. Be open to new ways of thinking, but also new ways of reading if you pick up the book. It's not a linear story. It's an ethnography. But back to this book. This is a story titled Evidence by Alexis Pauline Booms. Exhibit E, letter from Alexis after capitalism to Alexis during capitalism. Retrieved from email residue algorithm received in inbox alexisPauline@gmail.com on September 13th, 2010. Send date category echo, referenced and archived in a lecture capsule. Dear Lexi, breathe deep, baby girl. We won. Now life, though not exactly easier, is life all the time. not chopped down into billable minutes, not narrowed into excuses to hurt and forget each other. I'm writing you from the future to remind you to act on your belief, to live your life as a tribute to our victory and not as a stifling reaction to the past. I am here with so many people that you love and their children, and we are eating together, and we are tired from full days of working and loving, but never too tired to remember where we came from. Never exhausted past passion and writing. So I'm writing you now. Here in the future, we have no money. We have only the resources that we in our capitalist phase did not plunder to work with. But we have no scarcity. You can reassure Julia, we have plenty technology. Technology is the brilliance of making something out of anything, of making what we need out of what we had, of aligning our spirits so everyone is on point so much of the time that when one of us falls off, gets scared or caught up, the harmony of yes, 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 we are priceless brings them back into tune with where they need to be. We have the world we deserve, and we acknowledge every day that we make it what it is. Everybody eats. Everybody knows how to grow agriculturally, spiritually, physically, and intellectually. No one owns anything or anybody, or even uses anything like a tool. Each everything is an opportunity, and we are artists singing it into being with faith, compassion, confusion, breakthroughs, and support. It's on everyone's mind and heart how to best support the genius that surrounds us all, how to shepherd each of us into the brilliance we come from, even though our experience breaking each other apart through capitalism has left much healing to be done. We're more patient than we have ever been. And now that our time is divine and connected with everything, we've developed skills for how to recenter ourselves. We walk, we drink tea, we are still when we need to be. No one is impatient with someone else's stillness. No one feels guilty for sitting still. Everybody is always learning how to grow. Your heart sings every day because your ancestors are thrilled with themselves. All of us. Just breathing is like a choir, and I have the presence of mind and the generosity of spirit to even be proud of the you that I was when you are reading this, back in capitalism with all our fear and all of our scarcity-driven behavior, contradicting and cutting down all of our visionary words. Counter-poetics, right? I'm proud of you for being queer. I'm proud of you for staying present to the meaning of your beliefs, to the consequences of your actions, even when they were crashing into each other every day. I'm proud of you for letting the time of your revolutionary heritage grind your feel of failure and lack of to sand. I love you, the me that I was. But breathe this deep, because this is the message. We did it. We shifted the paradigm. We rewrote the meaning of life with our living. And this is how we did it. We let go. And then we got scared and held on. And then we had to let go again of everything that would shackle us to sameness, of our deeply held belief that our lives could be measured or disconnected from anything. We let go, and we retaught ourselves to breathe the presence of the energy that we are, that cannot be destroyed, but only transformed, and transforming everything. Breathe deep, beloved young and frightened self, and then let go. You'll hold on, so let go again, with all the love in the sky and the land and the water. Lex. With all the love in the sky and the land and the water. I hope that as you leave this space, you take with you a deep love for the sky and the land and the water, and all the living beings within those skies and lands and waters. I hope that you will grab onto the urgency of this moment, embrace change, choose a path, move, because we are not limited to or by business as usual. And if you don't believe, read a book.
Okay, now we have a few questions and comments. If you would wait till I can get the microphone to you so everyone could hear. Anyone have a question or a comment?
That was absolutely wonderful and inspirational. And I would love to get a copy of all those books and post them so everybody could have them, because I think certainly have awakened a curiosity and wanting to go deeper. And thank you. Such a beautiful message.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaking as a magical creature myself,
Absolutely.
I'd like to remind us all that we are all magical creatures and that we need to lean into our magic. Thank you for doing that for us.
No more questions? Okay. Kristi has our closing words.
And our closing words are from Adrienne Marie Brown. We hold so many worlds inside us, so many futures. It is our radical responsibility to share these worlds, to plant them in the soil of our society as seeds for the type of justice we want and need. Go forth, be well, plant seeds.